Hey, what's up, Mofutbol fans? Welcome to another episode of Mofutbol. And this time we're going from Midwest all the way to the West Coast and have a special event. And we have not only a person that first reached out to me when I started to make content, but he's a true OG of not only soccer, football, but MLS in general. So we have Edgar from, you know what? News against the galaxy, but beyond the galaxy, my friend. So, Oscar, Edgar, sorry, I was just talking to Oscar. So, Edgar, how are you doing, my friend?
Thank you, Mo. It's an honor to be here. Like I said, like you said, I'm Edgar Zuniga from News Across the Galaxy, and I am an MLS sicko. I love Major League Soccer. I see all the clubs, as like a brotherhood, and I'm always excited to meet fans from other teams. Even if people are like, "You're crazy,"
Uh
even
oh.
fans from San Jose and the friendly LAFC fans, because
Hmm.
there's some friendly ones too, and they're always surprised, when I approach them for an interview.
Right.
But I've met a lot of wonderful people across the league, and it's wonderful. I love this family.
Absolutely. Well, you've been around, so you're the OG, I will say. But before we jump to more of what MLS is now and where St. Louis SC showed up. So tell us a little bit more about who Edgar is and, you know, how's your soccer journey started?
Ooh, my goodness. the
Just
first time
like it
I
was
remember,
yesterday.
well, the first time I remember ever seeing or hearing anything about the sport was in 1982. My family had just moved from Nicaragua. I was born in Nicaragua in Central America.
Okay.
We had just moved to the States. And one of my uncles was watching World Cup 82.
Okay.
And I remember sitting there watching it, not knowing what was really going on. And I was just like, okay, whatever. And I just walked away. Right. So 4 years later, that same uncle came to my parents' house, and he's like, "We have to watch, this game. It's Argentina versus so and so." And we're like, "Okay." We started watching it, and that was my formal introduction to the sport, World Cup '86. And so we started watching all the different teams, and of course, as the tournament wore on, Argentina was one of the teams that was really exciting and fun to watch. And so I got to see the game versus England, the hand of God, right? And then
Yes.
that amazing goal that Maradona scored, which still gives me goosebumps, where he ran through the defense and he scored this incredible goal. And then we cheered for Argentina versus West Germany in the final. So when the build up to Italia 90 started happening, I heard that the U.S. national team was trying really hard to make it to the World Cup, so I started following them. And when they scored the goal against Trinidad and Tobago to qualify, I was really excited. Nobody else around me was, but I was excited. And I followed them throughout their journey in Italia. And then I was so excited for the World Cup. And it just kept building and building this excitement, this love for the sport. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, you were born in the States. Why is it that you only discovered it the sport when you came here? And Nicaragua is one of the few nations in Latin America where football, soccer, right, has not been the predominant sport. That has changed over the last few years. But when I came here, baseball and boxing were the two biggest sports there.
I see.
So I'm kind of an anomaly. People are like, "You're from Nicaragua. You know a lot about the sport." I'm like, "Well, I love the sport." I mean, I've really immersed myself into it. I studied the history of all the teams in the world. It's just crazy. I have this book. I'm sorry. Let me backtrack a little. When I heard that the World Cup was coming to the U.S. in 1994, I went out and got me two books. One was the flags of every country in the world, and it
Okay.
had a little bit of history on every country in the world up until that point, and also a book about the history of every national team in the world. Because I wanted to know, why does Italy wear blue? Why does this team wear a certain color, right? Even though it's not part of their national colors. And so I started learning all these things, and along the way, I learned about the history of all these countries. I learned about the flags and what they represent. So it was like this incredible stuff, and I was soaking it up like a sponge. When the World Cup came, I was so excited. It was beautiful. Um, so that, and then Major League Soccer came shortly after that. And ever since then, I just make sure to learn a little something almost every day that I can. Not,
Mhm.
I mean, about a lot of things, but I always focus on learning a little bit about the sport, whether it's just watching a game, reading something, or learning from my peers, like you.
Wow, that's amazing that you actually took the time to learn about the countries and sort of the whys, because we've all love to collect the jerseys, and but I don't think there's many people that, unless it's their home country, kind of understand what each color represents. So with that book, was there one country that you kind of learn why they're wearing certain color that was like wow to you? That's
Well,
kind of
first, I mean, Italy was strange, right? Because the
right.
colors are green, white, and red, and then I heard it has something to do with like the Roman Empire and some of the
Okay.
colors that and Napoleon's house and how they preferred the color blue. But the one that was really interesting to me is like, why does the Dutch team wear orange, right?
Hmm.
And then I found out it was because of the House of Orange, right? And so that was that part of the colors of their crest and their coat of arms, and it was like a symbol for them. And so they decided to adapt that color as part of their national identity when in sports, and I thought that was fascinating. um so that, yeah, that's the one that really fascinated me the most, because I said, well, I I guess they took this idea and made it something really unique, which is what other teams wear that color. And there's few of them, right? Maybe uh, Cote
Ivory
d'Ivoire
Coast
wears
is
it
probably yeah.
sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Or Ireland will wear it once in a while, but not that many teams.
No. Yeah, and they made it their colors because I think when you see an orange jersey, the first thing you think of is in Holland. So, um, that's quite interesting because I think you're probably one of the first one I've heard where immersed himself in just learning the countries walking into the World Cup, and also Nicaragua was not the introduction to soccer. I did not know they were almost the third preferred sports. So that's definitely interesting, and that the U.S. was your introduction to what soccer is. So
Yeah,
that
and it
means
wasn't
not many
easy.
people can say
Yeah,
that soccer has not been around.
and it wasn't easy. And this is where I'll give uh, St. Louis some credit, and you'll
Oh,
see why right now.
oh,
Because in in the early 80s, this was after the NASL was on the
mhm,
brink of collapse. Pelé, Beckenbauer, George Best, they were all gone. And the North American Soccer League was suffering to
right,
attract attention. On top of that, there was a rise of anti foreign sentiment in the United
mhm.
States. Like, what goes around. I mean, that stuff always happens, right?
Yes.
But at the time in the '80s, it was very evident. I remember, and football was seen as a foreign sport, as
Okay.
something that's very alien. It's something that's anti-American, and
Mhm.
um, which is strange because the sport has been in the United States almost as long as anywhere in the Western Hemisphere. It's one of the
Yep.
countries that first had a professional league, and we hear about how the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup has been around for more than 100 years. So the sport's been there. It's just
Yep.
people just ignored it or forgot about it. Well, um, U.S. soccer was suffering a lot. There wasn't a lot of interest in the sport, and if you showed any interest, people would mock you or put you down. The only place in the country that showed love for the U.S. national team during a time, it was the darkest time in the U.S. soccer history, was St. Louis. The Anheuser Busch
Yep.
invested a lot of money into building a training center for the national team in St. Louis, and they helped keep it alive at the most difficult and darkest time of the sports history here in the United States. And I think St. Louis deserves a lot of credit for that. I've always said that St. Louis to me is like the cradle of for American soccer, U.S. soccer, even though there's other places like Kearney, New Jersey, or like Portland, Oregon. There's different spots.
Right.
Even LA, or parts in Florida where the sport has taken a hold or where it got its start. But the cradle of St. Louis is what kept it alive and nourished it during the darkest times. And so credit to always St. Louis folk for Anheuser Busch for doing so much for the sport at the time. And then World Cup '90 came around, and after that, the sport really took off again.
That sounds like Oscar might come and join you and welcome you, and you probably won't have to have a pay for a meal because he might be like, Edgar's coming. He just gave us credits, and I think Oscar might just say you don't have to pay a meal for a meal again. So, but yes, I think that's one of those interesting stories. Knowing, especially where you are in the part of the country, knowing that there's that small pocket of the hill of St. Louis that kind of kept the sport of soccer slash football alive. But on your story, since you've covered soccer for quite a long time and almost pre MLS, so how was that transition from learning of what that World Cup was like, and then the NASL, and then which led to the MLS? How was that um, period of American soccer for you?
It was kind of like the wilderness years.
Mm.
And I'll make a quick reference to Doctor Who. I have my TARDIS back here.
Okay,
But Doctor Who was a very popular show in the 60s and 70s and the 80s. But by the 80s, I started to lose some interest. And then the BBC decided to stop funding it, and the show went into hiatus. And it didn't start up again until 2005. And during that era, between the time it was canceled in '89, 2005, a lot of wild stuff happened with the show. People were doing fiction, and there was a movie and which didn't do very well, but and it's all these things, and then people called it the wilderness years. And you could almost say the same thing about U.S. soccer, because I felt like, my goodness, I just missed out on the NASL. And
right,
we used to have the LA Aztecs here, and I just missed out on them. So I was too young for that. And then we had other small teams. We had a team called the LA Salsa, but I was still young. I said I was in
right,
high school, and I couldn't really afford to go to the games. I grew up in South Central LA. My family wasn't really, we didn't have a lot of money, so we are kind of poor. I don't want to say poor, poor, dirt poor, but we were, it was rough times for us. And
right,
so there was a lot of things I couldn't afford to do. And so we had the LA Salsa, and then we had some other local teams, but none of them really took hold. The leagues weren't particularly strong. And then I felt like I was kind of missing out. So at that time, that's when I started like really paying attention to international football. I became a fan of the only teams I would ever hear about at the time, which were,
right.
I became fan of Barcelona, Juventus, right? And then eventually I got into the Premier League, and a lot of people are surprised at the time I became a fan of Fulham. And people are like, Fulham is always now, they're not one of the heavyweights, right? They're a
Right.
team that right now they're struggling, but um, and it's difficult to be a Fulham fan. I could have easily said I'm going to cheer for Chelsea, right? But no, I went
Yeah.
with Fulham, right? And I stick with them. But and then I hear we're going to get our own league, and wow, I was so excited. I was so excited. I remember I got all the newspapers, and I saved them, and I was really looking forward to every event leading up to uh, finding out more about the league. And then I started hearing about all the cities that were going to get teams, and so it was just this wonderful build up to that. When I finally saw that they had released the new kits for the teams,
Right.
I knew there was only one store in the entire city that was selling the kits. It was a store called What a Kick in the Beverly Hills area of LA. And I remember I got one of my roommates in college to drive me out there, and I bought myself a kit before the first game. And at the time, well, I was working at a football shop called Soccer Shop USA,
Right.
which is currently located across the street from BMO Field. I mean, at the time it was the LA Sports Arena, but that's where I was working, and it's only about 5 minutes from where I used to live. So I was working there, and the owner was this Nigerian fella, and so he what he would do is that they made him an official vendor for Major League Soccer. So
Okay.
he would get these vouchers, and they were like 7, 8 bucks, whatever, and I would pay,
Yep.
and then I would just go to the games, and I went to as many games as I could to the point where I ran out of money in
Well,
the
yeah,
first
this.
year. And I was hooked, and I loved it. And I became one of the original Galaxians, which is the Galaxy Supporters Club. I'm
Okay.
one of the charter Galaxians, so I was there from the very beginning with that. And but at the time, I was in college, like I said, and I was working through college as a pre med biology major. But there was always an itch I needed to scratch, and that's journalism. And I wanted to
Yeah.
be because I just love writing and I love sports. So I joined the campus newspaper as a sports writer. And one of the first things I did, I wanted to see just how much weight that press pass had.
Mhm.
So I started contacting all the local sports teams, trying to see what I could get. I was able to get a minor league hockey pass with the Long Beach Ice Dogs. I was able to get a pass to cover NASCAR. And then I submitted one to LA Galaxy. And lo and behold, they gave it to me. And I was like, oh my God, I got a press pass for LA Galaxy. And the first day I went there, I met the guy in charge of the press and the PR director, and he told me, yeah, you're Edgar. I'm like, yeah. He's like, "Oh, you're from Cal State LA, the University Times." I'm like, "That's right." He's like, "My sister goes to Cal State LA, and she saw the list of the people that I was putting together for this, and she saw your name, and she's like, 'Oh, I know him. He was a sports editor. He has a column.'" And
Nice.
then she asked her, "Is he any good?" Like, "Yeah, I like his writing." And so he's like, "Okay." So they gave me a press pass.
Nice. And we always say that soccer is a small world, right? So it looks like that was one of those perfect example where even just one person also vouched for the great work you were doing pre LA Galaxy.
Yeah, and it opened up this amazing world because, like I said, that first day I go up into the Rose Bowl press box. The Rose Bowl is this massive stadium, right?
It sure is,
And
yes.
the press box is like way up there. It's like on this giant building above that. Kind you feel like you're floating above the field. And I'm sitting there, and I noticed that 2 rows down from me, or 2 people down from me, was the name Graham L. Jones. Now, at the time, Graham L. Jones was the main soccer writer for the LA Times,
Mhm.
and he was also the editor in chief of Soccer Digest, which is the biggest magazine in about soccer in the U.S. at the time.
Yeah.
And so he sat there, and then he came over to talk to me because I was wearing a polo that said University Times on it, and he says, "Oh, you're from the University Times." I was like, "Oh my God, this is Graham L. Jones," and
Mm.
he's like, "I used to be the sports editor there. Are you
Wow.
the sports editor now?" I'm like, "Yes, I am." He's like, "Oh, it's so nice to meet a fellow alum." He's like, "Congratulations on getting your press pass. If you ever need any tips, let me know." So I was like, "This is amazing," right? And I asked him, "If it's okay with you, could you please be my mentor? Could you please guide me?" He's like, "I'd be honored to."
Wow.
And so from that point on, he would look at my writing, or I would give him ideas or tell him what my ideas were, and he started guiding me. And he gave me some amazing advice that helped me stand out from some of the other writers that were in that press box, the more professional ones.
Mm.
Because I was still learning. It was my first year doing that. But he gave me incredible guidance that helped me throughout the years, and I can't thank him enough for that. He's retired now, but he's the one who really gave me that first push and a boost of confidence that I really needed into this world where I felt like I was scared. Like, what am I doing here? Right? In this giant press box with all these amazing writers. But no, that's where it all started.
Nice. Yeah. And so it looks like got brought out into that fraternity of journalists quite early. So on the early days of LA Galaxy, as you are just a fan, so I don't know when early you started to attend those games, but do you recall that very first game that you attended for LA Galaxy, and how was that experience for you to now being able to go to this game and experience what soccer is
Yeah, I was
in
there at the
stadium?
first game. Yeah, I was there for the very first game. I remember I got my voucher. I got two of them actually, and because I asked my one of my roommates, his name is Lance. I was like, "Hey, I got you I got you a voucher to go with me to this game." And he's like soccer. And he's like, "Well, I'm not a big soccer guy, but he's like, I'll go with you." So we took his car from from the campus up to the Rose Bowl, and there wasn't social media wasn't a thing back then, so we really had no idea what kind of attendance there was going to be at the match. And the Rose Bowl is like giant stadium, so in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I'm expecting like maybe 20, 30,000 people. We can just drive up into the stadium and park and just walk over.
Right.
We got out of the freeway, the highway, right? And
Mhm.
there's a line.
Yeah.
It took us an hour to drive up into the stadium area to park. And we stood in line for another hour to get inside. And once we got inside, that stadium was packed,
Mm.
Mo. There was so many people. I was like, dear God, I guess everybody got the word. And we had these seats kind of in the corner, a little bit farther up. I didn't care. I just was happy to be there. And I remember that the game start. We saw the ceremony. With everything. They actually rolled out the original Galaxy mascot, which they never brought up again after that game. It was this weird looking thing that there was supposed to be like a little galaxy guy, but it looked. I'm sorry if the show is family friendly, but it looked like a ripped condom. And I don't think that's why they brought it back again.
I
Um,
probably someone brought that up.
yeah, but it was amazing. It was so much excitement in the crowd, and the game started. But what was incredible, Mo, was that as the game wore on, more people kept showing up to the stadium, and they had put up these tarps behind the goals, and they had
Right.
some put up some tarps on the other side of the field. And as more people showed up, they started pulling out the tarps and filling in the seats to the point where more than 65,000 people showed up to this game. And
Mm.
there were so many people there, and they were chanting and singing that the police did not know how to deal with it, and they were actually arresting some people because they
Uh,
weren't used to people standing up and chanting and dancing and doing
Also,
all
they
that.
thought he were troublemakers.
They thought they were troublemakers. But Kobe Jones scored the first goal in team history. He celebrated. The place went nuts. And then later in the game, Iranian player Arash Naumous scored the second goal. Yeah, put Galaxy up 2-0. Near the end of the game, Gio Savarese, MLS, former, manager of Portland, he scored the first goal for New York Metro Stars. And then it was kind of tense towards the end, but in the end, Galaxy held on and they won. It was a big celebration. And I knew right there that MLS was here to stay.
Nice, and and you don't hear these days where the stadium is packed and people are still showing up, and 60 65,000 fans now. That's a MLS slash Messi numbers. Um, so that was the first. So did LA Galaxy, which we all know, have the whole big storied franchise. So from that first game to which kind of led us to year 15 to now where they are now, you as a original fan that's seen the first game to now, how is that experience where you're seeing all these new teams coming up, hundreds of podcasters, um, how do you see it now from year 1 to year 30, I guess, if I'm
Yeah, we're
mistaken?
about to hit year 30. um, yeah, it wasn't always sunshine and
Sure.
roses. Because they were MLS had that first bump, right, where the first year everybody saw it as a novelty, and people were hooked. I mean, if you love the sport, you're gonna stick there.
Right.
The one thing that bothered me was that they had their own rules, right? They had a countdown clock instead of the traditional, clock that
Ooh.
winds up, which was really strange because when the clock got to zero, the game was over. There is no added time. Uh, they needed to have a shootout to settle ties because Americans don't like ties, right? They don't like draws, so they had to have a winner in every game. Um, and then also the playoff system, which is it's an American thing, right? But we see it used in other leagues around the world as well. But um, so there was that, and that didn't last very long because eventually Major League Soccer decided to say, "Hey, we're not gonna sure, we're not gonna dumb it down. We
Right.
decided to adopt more of the rules, the actual rules, and the way the game is supposed to be played." And so we started seeing that transition, how the sport started to mature over the years. And at the same time, you started to see the level of support, the way that the fans were organized, and they started to become better organized and they started to develop their own traditions. We also, at the time, it was very, very difficult to find any kind of coverage about the team outside from maybe a TV broadcast or a radio broadcast. Podcasters, there weren't really much. Um, Out here, we have a legendary Galaxy announcer named Joe Totino. He's been the voice of LA Galaxy throughout most of the team's history. And at the time, he actually pushed to get a radio show called Talking Galaxy. And it was on for a few years. I remember I would never miss it, but it just didn't get, the kind of support that it should have at the time. But at least there was somebody there. Then Major League Soccer kind of hit a dip. But after 2002 and how the US did in that World Cup, I feel like it gave the league a boost.
Right.
Unfortunately, we saw two teams that had to, that were eliminated: Tampa Bay Mutiny and Miami Fusion. It was really sad to see them go because you want to see the league progress. You don't want to see it take a step
Folded.
back.
Right.
But if you play football, you know that sometimes you can't just keep going forward. Sometimes you got to pass the ball back a little before you can
Mhm.
really move forward and press the attack. And so the league started growing. Don Garber came in as commissioner, and although I've never really been a big fan of his, he was very bullish with the league, and he pushed for it to keep growing and expand. And there were other people that were very instrumental in keeping the league alive, like Philip Anschutz, Lamar Hunt. There are people who Lamar Hunt was an amazing person who
Yeah.
he was one of the people behind the NASL. He was one of the people that always supported U.S. soccer as well, and he that's this is why the U.S. Open Cup is named after him. He was a great person who really loved the sport. And then, like I said, Philip Anschutz, he is the one of the owners of LA Galaxy, the of AEG. But at the time, a lot of teams were suffering, and he actually took ownership of a lot of teams and kept them afloat until eventually he was able to sell off those teams, and then they flourished. We started seeing more teams coming in, and I always wondered, right, in the back of my mind, when is St. Louis gonna get a team?
I guess you
Um, uh,
and thousands of people.
yeah, I
Right.
was wondering because every now and then when LA Galaxy would be in the U.S. Open Cup, we would have a team from St. Louis come into the stadium. We had
Yep.
St. Louis Athletica, we had St. Louis AC, and I
FC.
remember
Yep.
I was like, "This is cool," the team from St. Louis. But when are they gonna get a team? We have the Wizards, right at the time. But when is St. Louis going to get a team? And you started seeing all these different other teams getting expansion. But where is St. Louis? I guess, and when it finally did happen, I was like, it's about damn
I'm.
time, right? But seeing the league grow was incredible. Now, um, like I said, I had a press pass, right? And in the early years, you could talk to the players no matter what. You could go in the locker room and you could talk to the players. Sometimes it was funny, it was kind of wild. The players would be walking in from the bathroom,
Right.
no towel, just walk in like that. Sometimes you'd have female reporters in there and they'd be like, "Woo!" Yeah. And some of them were like,
The
"Oh."
nature, I
but
guess.
but yeah, right. But the players were cool. Yeah, you could talk to them, you could ask them questions. And one of the things that I liked about that was at the time, Not everyone had the same quote. Not everyone had the same questions and answers. So
Right.
everybody had an opportunity to craft a unique story based on what you wanted to do with your time in the dressing room. Um, and then things changed because in 2007, we got David Beckham. And
Mm.
everything became streamlined. Everything became more corporate. Everything had to be a certain way. Whereas before, LA Galaxy practices were open to anybody. You could just walk up, you get a little folding chair and sit there and watch the team. Now there was a fence. Now
Yep.
there was a separation. And you
Hmm.
couldn't just show up and watch the team practice. You had to watch them from behind the fence. And before, the players were very open to hanging out with the fans. They didn't do that anymore. And in the locker room, they started doing a thing where um, you guys get three questions, only three questions, and we tell you which player you're going to talk to.
Yep. And usually it's the bigger news covering team that will probably get two of those questions.
Exactly. So, the last time I actually was in the locker room, I mean, the last time I actually had a press pass was in 2013. And I remember there was one instance when I really wanted to ask former Galaxy player Omar Gonzalez a question. And instead, we were talking to first, we talked to Robbie Keane, and then we talked to some other guy. And I really wanted to ask Omar Gonzalez a question. And I remember I went up to him and I was like, "Hey, Omar." And then the press guy came over. He's like, sorry, we're done.
Ooh.
We need you, we need to empty out the dressing room." And I was like, "All right, fine." And I was about to walk out, and Omar's like, "Shh, shh, shh, come here, come here, come here." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "What are you trying to ask me?" I was like, "Oh, really?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah." So I'm like, "All right, well," blah, 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 blah. And I asked him my question. He gave me his answer. And I was like, "Thank you, Omar." He's like, "Yeah, man." And I was like, "Yes, cool." This hasn't
And
happened
yeah,
forever.
and those are the players that you remember forever because
Yeah.
they the human aspect of um, counts a lot more than when you see him from afar. But especially with your fandom of LA Galaxy, so you've seen teams within in LA come and go, and
Yeah.
then now you have the newer LAFC that's and San Diego that's starting to make the noises. But how do you see when those teams come and go, and then you have to change? You're being rival for one team versus the other. How's that for the original team of California to see the others?
Well, our original rival has always been San Jose.
Okay.
It says 96. I remember like the first time San Jose came into LA was San Jose Clash.
Mhm.
And they had Eric Winalda, and he's a fantastic player. And those games were always very, very tense. And then in 2001, it just so happened that LA Galaxy met San Jose in MLS Cup at the
Of
time, and
course.
they beat us in overtime. Wayne De Rosario scored his goal, and I remember I was so heartbroken that they lost like that because it was the third time that Galaxy had gone to MLS Cup and they had lost, and um, they lost in overtime again, and to our hated rivals, right, the San Jose Earthquakes. And so uh, there's always been that rivalry with them. And then we eventually got Chivas USA. That was in
Yep.
2005, and that was such a strange club because
So I heard.
it was so niche because not only was it it was another LA team, right? But not
Right.
only that, it was specifically Chivas. And Chivas, obviously, it's an offshoot of Guadalajara in
Yep.
Liga
Yes.
MX. And so other Liga MX fans were not interested in Chivas USA. They saw it as like, hey, that's not my
Off
team
brand.
because,
Right.
even though they were trying to market themselves to the Mexican audience, to other
Mhm.
Latin Americans, a lot of people were like, no, we don't like Chivas of Guadalajara, so we're not going to cheer for Chivas USA. And then some of the more diehard Guadalajara fans saw it as an affront because to them, in the entire history of Guadalajara, they've always been proud of having just Mexican born players on the team. So they've always been Mexico's team. And all of a sudden you have Chivas USA. What is that? So that was a very weird experiment. They had a couple years of success, and but overall, it was. I felt like they were set up to fail, and they eventually got disbanded, and they fell apart.
Right.
And I remember thinking to myself at the time, "Good riddance. We don't need them. We have a team in LA anyway, a more successful team, which is LA Galaxy." But Don Garber did not want to give up on them. So from the ashes of Chivas USA, he got like a million owners to come together. They
Mm-hmm.
have so many owners, man. They have so many owners. They have all these owners, and they rebranded the team as LAFC. And I remember what bothered me about that was the fact that LA Galaxy, it wasn't like LA Galaxy was doing bad. LA Galaxy was the champions. LA
Yep.
Galaxy was, a team that had a lot of history. And so I was thinking to myself, what else do you want from LA Galaxy? They've done everything that they could to win championships internationally and domestic. And then you're gonna bring this team back again. And on top of that, for years, LA Galaxy wanted to have a team. I mean, wanted to have a stadium near the center of the city. And they're always told no because it's soccer, right? And it
Right.
wasn't like one of the big sports. And all of a sudden, LAFC got this brand new stadium near the downtown area where there's
Oh.
like nice options for transport, and they got they got all this support from the league, and um, Galaxy fans were like, "What the heck? These are all the things we all had always asked for and hoped for, and you're literally handing it to them." So it was like being the big brother and then seeing your little brother, just
Get
get
all
all
the
this,
the newer
all the good
things.
stuff, all the things that you work hard to get and
Yeah.
never got, like went to little brother, right?
So that's why
But
that's where I was hearing the whole Carson and all that. It looks like it derived from there, where Big Brother asked for all of the things, but as we all know, for those of us that are older brothers or sisters, we usually get the rough end of things, and then
yeah.
the smaller ones get the newer, shiny things throughout the year. So it looks like maybe that's what LA Galaxy got a little bit of that, and and then LAFC becomes one club that's actually also being successful from the get go.
Oh yeah, no, they were successful, and I felt like they not only learned from the mistakes of the previous franchise, which was Chivas USA,
Right,
or I'm not gonna say previous franchise. I would say from their original incarnation, because to me they're one and the same. Chivas USA and LAFC to me are two sides of the same coin. It's just one got reincarnated as LAFC.
right.
But I feel like they learned from all the mistakes that the previous ownership had made, and not only that, they learned from the mistakes LA Galaxy and some of the other MLS teams had made,
Mhm.
and so they were able to avoid a lot of those pitfalls and be successful along the way. And they got a lot of national attention. Don Garber, like they're like his darlings, and Taylor Twellman absolutely loves them because he hates LA Galaxy. So
Oh, you trying to get us in trouble now with Taylor? That's St.
he
Louis
doesn't
guy.
like
Come on,
us.
trying to get us in trouble.
We beat him in MLS Cup. He doesn't like us.
Uh, oh, come on. I know the Twelman's family. You gonna get me in trouble for that one.
No, I like Taylor Twellman. I actually like I said, the last time I had a press pass was in 2013. I remember um I where was I? I was in the gala. I was in the Dignity Health Sports Park
Okay,
bathroom, and I walked out, and Taylor Tobin was there. He's like, "Oh, hey, buddy." I'm like, "Hey, what's up?" He's like, "Can I go in now?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, go ahead." That was funny just to run into him like that.
random,
But
yes.
yeah, just random, like, "Hey, what's up? What's up?"
Yes, yeah. So of course, so you've seen the progression of the league, and especially on a journalist and a soccer fan, and I guess a soccer historian too. So and I've watched a lot of your shows where you actually like to, at the beginning of each season when the teams are releasing their new kits, and also that you have a lot of the old school, I think MLS 1.0 point oh 1.0 jerseys. So can you tell us a little bit more about, you've seen the progression of the kits from day one to now, and maybe tell us a little bit more about the show that you do when you review and grade those kits.
Oh yeah, that's something I love collecting kits. I have a lot of kits. I would say I have more than 80 kits in my closet from
Nice.
around the world, from every corner of the globe. Um, I'll share a couple right now with you because I was showing them to you before I came on.
Yes,
Let
sir.
me let me get them. This is one I've had for like 20 years, and I think I showed it to you before. It's Orlando
Pirates.
Pirates, up the Bucks, baby. You know, I remember like I was playing FIFA one day and I was like, hey, who is this team? How come I've never heard of them? You know, are they from Orlando? And then I looked them up and I was like, oh, they're from South Africa. So I
Yes.
went to my little book, you know,
Mm.
on the encyclopedia about
Yep.
football, and I looked at it. I was like, Orlando Pirates, you know, one of the most successful teams in South Africa. Their biggest rival, Kaiser Chiefs, right?
Yes.
Mamelodi Sundowns, right? And I was like, yeah, I was like,
Mm.
all right, I'm really gonna get into. So I follow them on social media. I follow them forever, and I really like this kid. A friend of mine just happened to be visiting South Africa, and I
Right.
asked him, you know, can you get me one? He's like, yeah, man. So here's this
So
one
you got the authentic from South Africa too.
from
You
South
didn't just
Africa. Yeah,
bought it.
no, this is straight from South Africa. And then
Nice.
the one I showed you also, and you had we have this receipt, right? I told you during
Yes.
AFCON, these guys are gonna be good. I have a Cape Verde kit.
Yes. You did not just jump in the bandwagon when they were about to make it. We were talking what the previous AFCON? We were talking
Yes,
to Chad, and yes, you brought them up from that time. So you knew they were coming.
yes, yeah. No, I they look because I also followed the progression. They had come so close to qualifying to the World Cup in three previous chances, and you could see that they were just building and building and building, and finally they knocked that door down this time. So it was really nice to see them get to that point and celebrate. But so it's beautiful to have the kit, but to answer more about the question about the kits, I have some rare kits. I have one from San Marino, which is
Okay.
one of the worst football teams in the world, right? It's a little landlocked nation located in Italia,
Mm,
and I have
yes.
a San Marino kit. I have several from Nicaragua. I have kids from Australia. A friend of mine who lived in Australia, she sent it to me, and I've had it for God, 27 years. It's a
Uh,
gift. I have kids from Scotland. That was also a gift. A friend who
mhm.
lived in Scotland, and he was a big fan of my writing when I used to write for Dove magazine.
Okay.
And he liked the fact that I would interview these famous people. And so he's like, I love your magazine. He was like, let me send you a gift. And he sent me a Scotland jersey. And I already had one from the World Cup in '98, but he
Mhm.
sent me one of the newer ones. And then he also found out I like I liked Heart of Midlothian. So he sent me two Hearts kits too. And I was like, what a nice guy.
Yeah.
What did I do to deserve this? And a friend of mine in Japan sent me a Japan kit. And so I have all these different kits from around the world. A friend of mine went to Vietnam and he got me one off a street corner that's 100% pirated, 100% too
Hey.
small for me to fit, but I have it, right? And so I looked at my collection and I'm like, dear God, I have so
Mm.
many teams. And not only that, I have teams from the U.S. I have one from Providence City FC, which is a small team located up in Rhode Island. I have one from um, the Minnesota Aurora, which is a team from a women's league that I was supporting since before they started. I voted on their kit, their logo, and
Nice.
everything, and then I went and got a kit. I also have one from North Carolina FC, and also before that, when there used to be the Carolina Railhawks, because my wife is from North Carolina, and I
Okay.
wanted to go there and support the sport where I could. I was one of the investors into that team when they first started trying to make the push to join MLS, and they get me a kit and it has the number of like, I think I was like the 16th investor or something. It has like a little number on
Nice.
the back. There's also a small team in the NPSL up in Boone, North Carolina, called Appalachian FC. And the first year that they were in history, I bought a season ticket package. And you're like, why? Right?
Uh,
You're not going to be there. Well, as part of the package, I would get a free kit. But what
Smart
did I
man.
do? I contacted the team and I told them, hey, I live out here in LA and I have the season ticket package. I want, can we raffle it off to a fan? And they're like, yeah, yeah, we'll do that. And so there was a raffle and a fan won it. And so the entire season, I just gave him my tickets and the parking pass, and he was happy to enjoy this as a gift from me. So
So you see, so you walk the walk and you live the sport at the same time. So that means you've mentioned all these countries, but there was no French jersey. So now we have any
I do have a jersey from France.
for
I
which
have, I'll tell you right now, because you're
hopefully
gonna be
it's not.
surprised. This
Hopefully
is
it
the
does
team
not
I
start with
support
an
in
M.
France. No, it's not Marseille.
Okay, okay.
It's Cannes.
Count. Oh, I. You know who? You know who started over there? Played a little bit. His name is. He's probably the nicest soccer player on earth, and he's small. His name start with a K. Conte. He had
Conte.
a little bit of time there. So, but we have now. I have to get you a jersey from France now. It it has to happen now.
My sister loves the French team, and World Cup '98, she went and got herself a Barthez jersey, and she had it.
Oh, dude, dude that is the epitome of a goalkeeper